Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hammer Podcast. But before I begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button and like the Hammer Podcast Facebook page. Now, today is 9/10/2020, and I am speaking with Donna. Donna attended the Rebekah Home for Girls in Corpus Christi, Texas in the late 70s, but it doesn't end there, and it's quite shocking. So please, you have to watch to the end because it's a shocking story that she has to tell us today. Now, I'm sure there's a few questions that people have, especially the ones that either attended the church or were in the homes. Number one, why was Faye Cameron so mean to those girls? Number two, why is it that you saw Lester Roloff, but you never saw his wife? Number three, what was Wiley Cameron up to? And number four, what went on behind the scenes with those farm workers? Well, we're about to find out, ladies and gentlemen. So let's listen to Donna's story. All right. So, Donna, welcome to the Hammer Podcast. I'm glad you're on.
Well, thank you.
Yes, you were at the homes from 1977 to 1982. Is that correct?
I went there in October of 1976.
1976. Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, just, if you want to start right from the beginning and just, give your story, just as much detail as you can remember,
Okay.
If you want to start off before you got there, how it all
came to be that I was there.
And, during and afterwards on how, you've,
okay.
How you're doing now, basically.
Okay.
Okay? Go right ahead.
Okay. Well, I was living in a very abusive home. Usual story. All the abuses. And at 15, I just started running away.
Okay.
Now, this home happened to be at the very same time, because two things can be true at once, a very extremely abusive home, all the abuses, but we went to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, sang in the choir. You know the story.
Right.
So, kids grow up, and they begin to say, this is bullshit, and you go. And that's basically what happened. And, you get drugged back, and you don't really have a lot of means at 15, but I kept leaving, kept running away, and I was gone one time for about 4 months. And talked to my mom, and she said, let me take you out to eat, I miss you, and met her. And I knew something was weird because she was acting really weird, and she had her preacher with her. And and you have to remember, I was scared to death of these people. And I know a lot of this stuff that I say now, I think about it now, and I think, oh, man, you were so stupid. Why didn't you just go? But I was scared to death of these people. And they kind of told me what was getting ready to happen to me. I was going to a girls' home out in Corpus Christi, Texas, and, of course, I said, no, I'm not. And I started crying and, acting like I'm leaving, and I was kind of forcefully held while my mother shoved two blue pills down my throat. Later on, I learned that they were Valiums.
Oh, okay.
I wake up, yes, true story. I wake up later on, I'm in the back seat of a car, it's dark, we're on the road, and my mother's in the back seat with me, and Dave Hardy, the pastor from Eastland Baptist Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma, was driving. And, they're just telling me how it's going to be. And I get there, we pass through the guard shack like usual, pull up to the great big white 2-story dormitory and knock on the door, because the doors are always locked. And a woman answers. And they were expecting us, and pretty much they hugged me and left.
That's it.
And I began, that was it. That
Wow.
was it. I knew this. I knew what the deal was. Okay, this is a Jesus place, and
Right.
so I need to get back to church and stop acting so bad. And this was going to fix that for them. They thought they were doing the right thing, I guess.
So you were born into the Baptist religion? Your parents were?
No, that's
No.
the crazy thing.
Okay.
No, that's the crazy thing. I was not. At the time that this happened, when I was 16, my mother and our family as a household had only been involved deeply in the church, in the Baptist church, for 3 years.
Okay.
Up until I was 13, no. She was married 7 times. We lived everywhere. I spent half of my childhood not even with her. But by the time I was 13, she had gathered us all up and was with her last husband. And for some reason, this time it was going to work because she had found Jesus.
Okay.
So that's how that started. So I was shown what dorm room I was in, and I did lay in that bed for about 3 days crying because I didn't want to be there. And then I realized I'm going to have to get with the program. So I did.
Now, Donna,
Went to school and
I noticed that one of the pictures that you sent me of the Rebekah home, the building itself, it's kind of a smaller home than what I saw. It was
correct. That was not right. That was not the Rebekah home that I was in. That was actually the first original Rebekah home.
Right.
But by the time I got there in '76, it was the great big new 2-story dormitory.
Right.
And next to that was what we at that time called the guest house.
Okay.
And then next to that, because that big nice cafeteria hadn't been built yet either, and next to that was that building that was the where it said Rebekah Home for Girls eventually came down, and it was the Jubilee Home. It's for the older girls.
Right, Jubilee Home. Yes.
Yeah. But that was right when I first got there.
Okay. Go ahead.
Anyway, so I just it became very clear to me I better follow the rules, so I did. And for a time, I just wanted to behave so I could get out of there.
Right.
I was actually, a pretty good little Rebekah girl. I really was.
What was it? The same? I guess you had to wear the red dress on certain days and the blue dress on other days.
It was for school.
Right.
They were called school uniforms. And when we got back to our dorms, we could put our regular clothes on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and at that time, and at church, we could wear our regular clothes, except for special occasions, when things were being filmed, or if we were going out somewhere, to perform. And I did a little stint, just for a couple of months to fill in. They always did the summer tours.
Okay.
And I did a little stint there flying around with Mr. Rolloff in his little airplane as the alto in the Liberty Bells.
Yes.
With Miss Elaine. But I was just a fill-in, and the girl that I was filling in for had actually had run on the tour. Just took off. It's crazy. This place was just, I hadn't really thought about all this stuff for so long, but, memories have just been flooding. I couldn't even hardly sleep last night. But, I sound so crazy, this shit's coming out of my mouth now. But, she took off, so I filled in. And then she eventually came back. Her parents found her, and her name was Anita. Her first name was Anita.
Okay.
And when she showed up, I was out.
Oh, did they go and find her?
No. Of course, we were minors all still at that time.
Right.
And they had to report it to her parents. And somehow she ended up getting, back to her parents' house.
Oh, okay.
And then her parents brought her back to Rolloff. And I know.
Oh.
She was sorry. She did the repentant thing. She was sorry. She gave her testimony. She didn't know what happened and blah, blah, blah. And so I was no longer needed as the alto in the Liberty Bell Quartet.
I remember watching some
It
of
was okay
those.
with me, though.
I remember watching some of those Rolloff sermons, and of course, Rolloff would, when he was at a university or a church, he'd have some of the Rebekah girls come up, or some girls from the Jubilee home come and give their testimony. And it always seemed that it sounded like it was rehearsed. It's like every testimony was basically the same. I was defeated. I was into drugs and rock and roll, that kind of stuff. So
yes, and it was.
Oh, I'm sure.
It really was. You just kind of wanted your shot to do that, so maybe you could get some attention.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really was that way. You're talking about very young girls here.
Oh yes. I know that Rolloff.
Very young girls, and frontal lobes are still being formed.
Correct.
Very impressionable.
I know when there was one sermon, if I can remember correctly, that Rolloff did, he was saying that he took kids in as young as 9.
Mm-hmm.
So, some of them were not even teens yet. And they were in there.
And that's why here, one of the things that really angered me the most about all of, there were so many things, but the biggest of it all was how it was so, his catch was, I'm saving all these young people.
Yeah.
From the horrors of the devil and sin and the world. And I am telling you, the truth was, we were all so young, we didn't really have a past yet. And most of us were there for the same damn reasons. Our homes. And nobody ever asked us about that. Ever. There was never any counseling, any therapy. And there's times, I guarantee, if we had gone around that dormitory and asked how many girls had been just sexually molested, sexually abused, they'd probably, all of them raised their hands. But no one talked about any of that. There was never, here were the two things that we have to offer you. Prayer and Scripture.
That's your.
That's it.
Yeah, that's their way of bringing you back. You know what I mean, from the devil to Christ. All you had to do is, and of course.
And if it doesn't work and it doesn't change everything about you, then there's something wrong with you.
Right, and of course you had to listen to Rolloff sermons 24 hours a day.
All the time. All the time. We had no TV. No radio. Let me start over. No TV, no newspapers, no magazines, nothing from the outside world. We could have. We had access to radio stories, but we didn't have radios. We had speakers in our room that played the Family Altar program. That was our access to the outside world.
Family Altar program. And what's funny, Donna, is if you go to, I think it's rolloff.org, they have Rolloff sermons, the Family Altar, and some of his other ones playing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're still at it.
I was so shocked at the stuff that I could find. I hadn't looked around or anything, but the fact that I'm even talking to you shocks me. And it was just everything I could find. It was just the stuff that I learned, but I had no idea that it's very kind of shadowy, their information. They are still operating?
Yes, they are, but they are not operating the Rebekah home, The Anchor home, the lighthouse are not there anymore. The buildings are still there. Well, at least the Rebekah home building is still there. But the lighthouse and the Anchor are not there. The buildings are gone. I think they were just big trailers, I think, at one time. So, but they're gone. But they are still doing the homes. It's called the Rolloff Men's Home and the Jubilee Home, and they're only for adults. They don't deal with teens anymore.
Okay.
Yes. So the victory is half won.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
So yes.
Okay. That made it. It was everything. I was shocked at some of the stuff that I found though that is still out there, and I even ran across that old big meeting he set up in Texas, the Azariah meeting.
Uh-huh.
And I listened to a little bit of that, and it just, wow. I mean, it's like you're there again.
He always had that.
And everybody just.
He always had that Marine with him, the one with the eye patch, and
yes.
he was missing an arm.
Yeah, and the pretty wife.
Yes.
She used to be Miss America somewhere or something.
Yeah. Yep, he was always there.
Yeah.
Whenever he had the big meetings. So, but and going back to the clothes, do you remember when you had PE? You had to wear those really ugly, nasty pink culottes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, those things were hideous, hideous.
Yep. But hey, there was supposed to be no lusting going on. No lusting going on. And you know what? Here's the thing.
Yes.
I bought into that till I aged out of Rebekah and kind of found myself floundering. And actually, Miss Elaine from the Liberty Bell Quartet kind of blind dated me with this anchor boy. One day at Rolloff's house, Sunday after church for lunch. And next thing I know, we're engaged.
So there was no courting, there was no kissing, there was no no touching hands or nothing like that.
No.
Wow.
We knew each other for about 2 months, and then we got married, and it was just the greatest story ever. Rebekah girl meets anchor boy, they marry, and we spent the first 2 years of this marriage traveling around all these different churches, playing these different sermons of Lester Roloff's, and then collecting the offering, and then sending it in to the office there in Corpus Christi, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
The accounting office there in Corpus Christi, Texas.
The Enterprise. Yeah. I was reading up.
Enterprise.
I was reading up on Lester Roloff, and I was taking a look at some of his financials, and it says that he was making roughly about $2.5 million a year, just on donations.
Did you see his house?
His house. It wasn't that 2-story house with the pillars in front.
Yes.
It was a very gorgeous house.
Yeah.
But it's not there anymore.
Beautiful house.
It's not there anymore.
Oh, it's not?
There's like a shack there now.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So,
I have had a couple of times in the last probably 20 years of my life where I've been really close to going out there because my husband and his work and stuff, and even had it planned, and backed out every time. I did. I don't know why.
Well, like I told you before, I'm originally from Corpus Christi, Texas, and I went back there a couple of months ago. My mother passed, so I went down there for the funeral, and Corpus Christi is a shithole. It's bad.
Is it?
Yes. It's grown exponentially, but it's not a gorgeous city by the sea as they used to call it.
Yeah.
It's just garbage everywhere. Houses are run down. It's just terrible. It's terrible.
Okay.
So, but you were talking about the cafeteria, and then you have, of course, that 2-story building behind it, or next to it. And
yes.
I remember the Rebekah girls used to be, they used to upstairs. That's where they did their schooling. And I went to the Rebekah Elementary School, which was on the bottom floor. Now,
Yes.
I don't know if you remember some of the
Yeah.
teachers. I remember I think I can't remember the principal's name, but I remember the lady who was like head of the whole elementary. Her name was Miss Davidson. And then you had Mrs. Stagel, and you had a couple of other ones. And they used to wear the white blouse with the red vest and the blue dress. That was their
And remember the little tie? The little tie.
Yes, the little tie. And that was their uniform.
The little,
So,
little tie. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Yes, I do remember that. And there was. It's so weird how every place has its own language, but there was a term for that amongst us girls,
Uh-huh.
the Rebekah girls. You were the town people, the town
Okay.
kids. And we didn't associate with each other, did we?
No. No. I think there would be times when we would come out the front door of that building, and the Rebekah girls were still going up the steps. So you could see them, but you couldn't talk to them. You couldn't look at them. But we looked anyway. But yeah.
And that's it was it was so weird, and it was just other kids, but y'all were the town's kids, and we just knew that we were not supposed to have anything to do with you.
Right. Well, there were some girls that were at the Rebekah school that were
Yes.
from Corpus
and I
Christi.
remember. Yes. Natasha and Nicole.
Yes,
They were kind of hoity-toity. I do remember that. Their parents were wealthy. You could tell that.
Yeah, I know there was a girl
And
named.
actually, one of the workers' families. You remember the Manuses, Weston family?
No, I don't. I remember the Stevers.
Okay.
The Stevers and the Davidsons.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yes. But as far as the name, I'm
Okay.
not too good with names. Oh, the Hagees. Remember the Hagees?
Me either.
There was
Yes.
the Hagees.
Yes.
And there was some other ones. There were the Martins.
And then, of course, the old faithful Miss Yoder.
Yes, Miss Yoder. Do you remember a lady? Her name was. She actually ran there. There was two elementary schools. You had the Park Avenue Elementary School, which was in Corpus Christi on Park Avenue Street, and
Yes.
it was like grades 1 through 4 or something like that, or 1 through 3, and then of course they had to take the bus to go to 4th, 5th, and 6th grade at the farm.
Yeah.
So there was a lady, actually she was the principal of Park Avenue School. Her name was Mrs. Copeland. Really, really tall, skinny lady with a bouffant hairdo.
We didn't. Now, I had more access to the not the outside world, but the farm people, the farm world. Once I aged out of Rebekah, and when I say aged out, I really didn't. What I did was I graduated. It was PACE. Remember, they had the PACE
Yes.
school. So you do it at your own. You do it at your own pace, or ACE, Accelerated Christian Education. But I
Yes.
finished early. And because I did, it was like, well, okay, let's just get married. And so I didn't really age out because I was 17. When Lester Roloff married Frank Vanco from the Anchor home, and I was 17, and he was 19.
No, I'm not very sure what the
Wiley
age was.
Cameron.
Do you recall what the age was in order to get married? I mean, was 18 the legal age?
Yes, it was 18.
But he married you at 17.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. But my mother came, and we went to the courthouse when we got the marriage certificate, and she signed the waiver giving me permission to do that.
Okay. And was there a reception?
No.
Oh,
No.
that's terrible. That's terrible.
No.
It sucks.
No, and you know what? Our wedding pictures, we never got one single wedding picture because the person at the People's Church there that, let me do this for you, Brother Frank, did it, and for some reason, they never came out. There was I don't know, it's been so long now, but they never came, and we never even saw one wedding picture, but, which was, it's funny now when you know how that marriage ended up. And it should have never started. Actually, what we were about was we were advertisement for the Rolloff Evangelistic Enterprises.
Okay.
And that is why it was like, let's do that. Anchor boy meets Rebekah girl, and then we'll send them out on the road. And they can talk about how much their lives have changed.
Publicity, yes.
Because of us,
Now, your husband, I know that there was a lot of girls that...
He is my ex-husband.
Okay,
now.
ex-husband. I'm sorry, ex-husband. When was he trying to become a preacher? It seemed like all the guys that got saved there always wanted to be preachers because God called
he did.
God called him to preach.
God had called him to preach, yes, and that's what made him stand out because he had actually was. When he aged out, when he got, he finished his high school years there at the Anchor Home, and he aged out, he came to the farm and became part of the lighthouse to kind of work and help out there.
All right.
He also got the call to preach, and one of the things that he did was he would go out on the road with these sermons and play them. So he was already doing that. I just couldn't go with him until we were married because it wasn't proper.
Right.
And he was doing it with, do you remember like the music guy over at the school, Goldman?
Yes, I do.
Okay. He and Brother Goldman were going out on the road and traveling. That's what he was doing. And then when we got married December 31st, 1977, because we were now married, we could go do it together. So that's what we did.
Let me guess, you slept in separate beds too, even when you were married?
No.
Well,
we were married then. We were allowed.
It seemed like that, with the restrictions that they had. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes, but let me tell you something. That was the problem. That was the problem because it was all show. Because once I was no longer in the girls' home under, you don't know. You just know what you're told.
Right.
I thought everybody was there just serving the Lord, doing amazing things, and I don't know. It's the mission field. This is an amazing place. This is God's place,
Right.
And once we had our first child, we didn't want to travel around anymore. We came back to the farm and moved into one of those trailers out there on Trailer Row. And Frank became a co-assistant pastor with Mr. Cameron for the People's Church.
Okay. And
he taught Bible over there at the school. And then we were kind of supposed to do things with the youth. We were kind of like youth director thingies, too. Way too much on our plate for a 21-year-old and a 19-year-old. Way too much.
I hope the money was good.
But, yeah.
God will provide.
It was for some of them.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. It was for some of them.
What strikes me as funny is...
But once...
go ahead.
Once I got to living out there on the farm, amongst the real people and saw what was really going on, there was such an underbelly of debauchery that it was just shocking.
Do as I say, not as I do. I know. That's the way they were.
Yes.
It wouldn't have surprised me if there was smokers and drinkers there, just in hiding.
There was. I mean?
Oh, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure.
There absolutely was. I know there was. Because that's I ended up being a smoker and a drinker there. I was one of them.
Right. But I know that Lester Roloff abhorred alcohol and smoking because he always preached about it all the time. Cigarettes give you lung cancer, alcohol give you cirrhosis, and then
Yeah.
behind his back, you have these people doing the thing that
Oh
he's
my gosh.
telling people not to do. But that's
Yep.
religion. It's a business, is what it is. You know,
Mhm.
what surprises me is, I mean, Lester Roloff was genuine. Okay, and what I mean by that was he believed every word of the Bible. You know what I mean? He lived it, he breathed
Yes.
it, he followed it. But the other ones, Wiley Cameron, Brother Crummy, some of the other ones, I don't know about them.
Oh,
They were a little shady.
no, very shady, very shady. From the get go, from the get go, from
Okay.
the get go. And this is a true story. What I'm getting ready, I knew this from the beginning.
Okay.
Wiley Cameron, I knew what. But here, you know, oh my gosh. But you compartmentalize things, you know, because I turned around with this knowledge in my head. And, you know, I asked him to give me away when Lester Roloff married us, but I didn't have a dad, you know, and that's who I had to pick from. But anyway, I had been there about a month. I had been at Rebekah home for about a month, and
Okay.
he was the Bible teacher there. And one day, class was getting ready to start. We're all sitting in our desk, and he comes in, walks by me. And I smelled his cologne as he walked by.
Uh-huh.
And I said, "Oh, Brother Cameron, your cologne smells wonderful." And he stopped. He leaned down into my ear
Uh-oh.
and said these words. "You know what it's called?" I said, "No." He said, "It's called To Catch My Prick." I am not lying. As God as my witness, my soul burn in hell.
To catch my prick.
And to catch my prick. And he stood up and went to his desk and he taught Bible, and you know, here's what happens in those situations.
Yeah.
You second guess yourself. And that's no. I'm like, this is the girls' home. They sent me here because I'm screwed up. These people aren't screwed up. I am.
Right.
He didn't say that. But that is what he said. I know that's what he said. Because it, you know, kind of came with a little naughty wink and like our secret. And the truth is, I guarantee he tried that with them all. But there was a no-go for me.
Right.
So
it wouldn't surprise me if he was cheating on Faye. It wouldn't surprise me. With some of the workers and staff.
Well, he was trying to.
Well, did you ever see Faye?
He was trying to, at least with the Rebekah girls. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I saw Faye a lot.
Oh.
Yeah, I saw Faye a lot. And when I read that article where she had been banned for life,
right,
that on the two different occasions where she had been reported to have slapped these girls in the face, I absolutely believed it. I have no doubt in my mind that it happened.
Oh, I'm sure it did.
No doubt. I can see it happening.
The problem was, Donna, is a lot of the people would believe the staff over the girls because they would tell them, hey, these are troubled teens.
Correct.
You know?
Correct.
So she said that I slapped her. Well, she's a troubled teen. She's going to say anything to either get me in trouble or get out of the home. And, of course, everybody that was in that church.
That was what I hated the most.
Right. Everybody that was in that church was completely brainwashed. So, to tell you the truth, I think Rolloff
was... that is true.
I think, to tell you the truth, I think Rolloff was probably an idol to them.
He was. He was. It ended up being, and you're correct, I agree with you, that Lester Roloff was genuinely sincere.
Yes.
And authentic, and his vision was real. He was sincerely trying to help people and do what he believed God told him to do. And he was successful at this, you have to admit. But it got too big.
Yes.
It got too big. And he was horrible at vetting the people, and he ended up with 500 acres of a cesspool. That's what he did. And, I had a couple of interactions with him that, for as young as I still was, something just made me feel like he wasn't able to even comprehend how people in the world is anymore.
Okay.
And to me, he was stuck in some place, and maybe it worked at one time, but it just wasn't working anymore.
Well,
it got too big.
I think what happened was, like you said, he vetted the wrong people, because he didn't have time to watch the homes. He was evangelizing.
No.
He was going out in his plane. He was going to universities and churches and preaching the gospel and collecting donations. So he didn't have time.
Yeah.
So while he's gone, you know the old saying, while the cat's away, the mice will play.
Well, I don't know much about the people before I got there, you know, just the regular history that he would always talk about in his sermons and in the stories and the biographies and the different things, but he really messed up when he hired Wiley Cameron. And Wiley is a very good name for that man. It really is.
Yes, Wiley Coyote. Yes.
It really is. There about him that were very, very creepy. Yeah. And Faye Cameron didn't need to be a dorm mom to anybody. When I finally left there, I was right at 22, the place was everybody out there on that farm was sleeping with everybody, going to clubs, everybody was drinking. There were TVs out there. So there was everything that was being preached in that church house was not happening on the farm. There were two total different realities. And my husband was one of them that was shooting up. And it was just horrid. And that is why I left. I couldn't take it anymore. I waited long enough for Jesus to fix things.
Right. You said
I took my daughter and left.
You said he was shooting up? Was he an addict?
Yes.
He was an addict.
Yes.
What was he?
He came. Well, remember now. You're putting together a troubled girl,
right,
and a troubled boy, and I was so young and naive. Everybody there. What was their testimony? I used to do drugs. I was an alcoholic. I was running the streets. The law was looking for me. I mean, that was their story,
right,
and that was his. Jesus fixed it. I believed it
temporarily.
I had no clue. But when things started going, I mean, I don't know, it was just like the bottom dropped out or something. It just got too big, and there was like new people showing up all the time on the farm. And just bad vibes, and I don't know. It you know, half the time I wouldn't even go to church anymore. You didn't even have to. It was, I don't know. It was just horrid. And you couldn't trust anybody. No one was nice to each other. The show went on when Lester Roloff walked in that side door of the auditorium of the People's Baptist Church.
And the show began. And everybody, praise God, amen, brother, and all that stuff. Yep. Mm-hmm. It was all an act.
Yeah.
It was all an act.
And I am the kind of person, and the truth is not everybody in those places were messed up kids. They were from abusive homes, and that was my story. I wasn't a drug addict, alcoholic, in trouble with the law, none of that stuff. I wasn't robbing places, nothing. I was running away with my boyfriend because I was safer there, and that's the truth. You were
a rebellious teen, just like every teenager.
I was yes. Yeah.
Every teenager's that way.
When you, every teenager, but you're not supposed to be. You're stiff-necked and rebellious.
Yes.
Going down the wrong road. And the answer to that is to shame you, restrict you, hammer you, guilt you, and act like, hey, we did everything right. What's wrong with you? That's what it was. And if you just read enough scripture, you just pray enough,
Everything's going to be fine.
then
Yes.
you should be good. Everything will be fine. Everything will be fine.
And I know.
But it really wasn't. It was really going downhill bad. It was going downhill bad.
I know they had a pedophile there. Brother Martin. I actually, you know what? I still somewhere I have to find it. There's a yearbook from 1982 that I have. I have to find that. But this guy there was one particular girl in the elementary school that he always had his eye on. He always tried to make her laugh. You know, he always was looking at her, smiling at her.
Yeah.
And once we left, we found out, and like I said, this is what I heard. I can't know for sure. But it turns out that, from what I heard, he was caught molesting this girl. So, and we saw him about 5 or 6 years later. He was in the downtown area of Corpus. He was a street bum. I guess his wife left him. I don't know. But we tried to call out to him, and he ran away. So
Was he the guy that they had a bunch of kids?
I think he had 3 or 4 of them. Little skinny guy, short brown hair. His wife
Yes.
had really
Glasses?
yes, he had really long, stringy brown. His wife had really long, stringy brown hair. A little chubby, a little on the chubby side.
I don't remember. She was?
Right. That was I didn't.
Yes.
I can't remember her name. But yeah, he was creepy too. So, I mean, like you said, there was a lot of debauchery going on over there behind closed doors.
There really was.
That nobody
really
knew
was.
about. So
That nobody knew about.
yeah.
But you would find out about it if once you were out there on the farm, and you just something was wrong. Something was wrong, and I'll be honest with you. One of the reasons why I finally left is I knew this stuff because it was happening in, I was going to say my home, my trailer.
Okay.
My husband had affairs with 2 of the co-workers out there. Do you remember Faye or Eric?
No.
I want to say the last name, but I don't want to. Okay. Well, there were 2 different couples out there that we were friends with throughout our period of time that we were there as a married couple,
Right.
working on the farm. And he had affairs with both their wives, my friends. And it was right at the beginning stages of that second affair. This all happened in there on the farm. Everybody knows about it. And I'm throwing fits about it because that's my personality. I don't, if you're going to humiliate me and embarrass me, I'm not at least going to help you do that. I'm not going to give you permission.
Right.
And I'd had enough. And everybody out there, they were shooting up. Most of them were not working even on the farm. They were living there, and it was a really bad money time for the Rolloff Evangelistic Enterprises. And people had been saying, y'all need to get jobs in town. We don't know when, the next paycheck. So, and people were getting, a lot of folks were getting jobs in town.
And of course, being introduced. And they're being introduced to the world. And of course, they fell right back into
Yes.
it. Yeah.
Yes.
Which is normal.
Yeah. That is true, too. It is normal. There was a time when, we were trying to be such a good little Rolloff representative, field representative, that if I took a sip of Coca-Cola, which was a big no-no, I felt guilty.
Yeah.
Don't eat a piece of bacon. And, it was that regimented. They beat that into you. And, yes, there was culture shock when you finally get back out into the world. There is absolutely culture shock.
Well, I'm sure it was a shock when you left the Rebekah home in that environment where it's basically everybody's doing right or everything's godly, and then you get to the actual where the workers are, and you see all this stuff that's going on. I mean, that had
Yes.
to have been. It's like, what in the hell is going on? These people are not practicing what they preach.
No. And it was like immediate with me. Immediately I could tell, and I picked up and I watched and sensed, and it was immediate. It was immediate.
Right.
And I had a very hard time adjusting. And I didn't ever do it very well. I really never did do it very well. I found myself one of those people out there that I didn't get in trouble or anything like that, but I was very contrary about a lot of the way things were being done and a lot of the things that were being ignored that needed to be addressed. And, I would say stuff about it from time to time.
Well, it's pretty easy. I mean, if you do something bad, in their religion, all you got to do is just ask God to forgive you. It's all wiped clean, and you're good to go. Just keep going. Okay,
Yeah.
so I had an affair with this woman. Well, let me pray to God, ask for forgiveness. Okay, God forgives me. Okay, let's move on. There was no repercussions. There was no,
None.
yeah.
And especially for the men.
Well, the men were in
Especially
charge.
for the men.
Remember, the Bible
Men were in
says
charge.
the Bible says men are head of the household. The woman is to submit to the man. That's what they believed.
And we were reminded every day. we were, in case we forgot,
Right.
we were reminded every day. And that's true. It was a very, very degrading place for women to be. It really was. And the silly part of it is, I admit, I bought into it for a minute. I
Right.
really did. What did I have to lose? I've always been a very spiritual person,
Right.
and I still am. My relationship with God is completely intact, and somehow through all of this, I found my own way of relating with God, and it absolutely works for me.
Everybody worships in their own way. Of course, the people
Yeah.
that are still religious. I mean, some girls came out of there and they didn't want to have anything to do with God. There was one lady that I interviewed. She didn't even want. Every time she drove by a church, she would just shake and just ugh. She wouldn't even step into one. That's how bad it was. And some women still retain their faith. It's totally up to you. So,
Well, I would say for me, what happened is between that and then, the ridiculous. My mother stayed in church,
okay.
Rolloff style, till she died. So that influence was always still there in my life. But I was a grown up now. But she's still my mom. She was still my mom. So it was kind of, and listen, let's remember, I married the man. I married a man. I married an anchor boy. We went through that divorce. I remained the mother of his two daughters to this day. I actually have some really lifetime souvenirs from Rolloff.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my daughters. you know?
Right.
Serious.
Yes, that's a lifetime souvenirs. You're right.
It's a lifetime souvenir. And there's, I wonder a lot of times, what my life would have been had I had been able to not have had that experience. It's a terrible thought because my two daughters exist and I love them. And I can't imagine not having them. But it has been a real struggle to explain this stuff, and that's why your dad was never in your life, even though he's always lived right not far from us.
Oh, okay.
But he could never get off the drugs. He was never, to this day,
Was it heroin?
full-blown degenerate, anything, Right now, it's all the opiates, you know.
Okay.
And actually, the truth is, he is probably, you know, he may have another year and a half left. It all caught up. Let me just put it that way.
Takes a toll on your body, for sure.
Yeah. And I think that he still he has a couple of guys that he stays in contact with. I don't know if you remember Mike Reeves.
Yes, I do, actually.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, him. And actually, Mike Reeves, from time to time, will touch base on Facebook.
Okay.
And then, do you remember Herman Fountain?
No.
Okay. He was another one of those big batch of young boys that all got called to preach at the time my husband did, and he went out in somewhere in Mississippi and opened up his own, like, Bethel Home for Children or something.
Bethesda.
No, not Bethesda.
No, not Bethesda.
That's out. Yeah, that's Rolloff. This was in Lucedale, Mississippi.
Okay. Bethel Home.
It's all shut down now too. Bethel Home, yeah.
Not surprising.
Yeah. No. For all the same reasons, exactly the same reasons. In fact, he ended up spending a year in jail for assaulting the cops when they came in to shut him down and they removed 72 kids. And I guess they put up a fight. And for assault and battery on a police officer, he spent a year in jail.
So
this place was crazy, and
yes.
Everybody that came out of there was nuts. That's just how I feel about it. And I am so glad that I was miserable the whole time I was there, because that meant I didn't fit in. I had so many times that people were upset with me because I just called it out like I saw it. And I was the not submissive wife on the farm. From time to time, I wore earrings, and you're not supposed to do that.
Right.
That's vain. The first year, my first child, she was a year old. Her birthday's in June. I made a mistake, and I went and got one of those little plastic swimming pools, you know?
Right.
And I got a little tiny little baby girl bathing suit and put it on her. And, that was wrong. That was wrong. That was, we do not dress our daughters like that.
Oh, okay.
And we're worshiping the sun. What do you do? Trying to work on a tan. I couldn't do anything right.
Well,
nothing.
Well, for them to say we don't want your little girl dressed up in a bikini, you were probably making some of those perverts over there a little excited. So maybe it's a good thing you didn't have her in that.
Well, and I made that kind of a comment, and of course I got in trouble.
Right. You never got hit or smacked, did you?
No.
Okay.
No, but it was for me. It was worse than that. I was just really degraded and humiliated as a female there, as a woman. From the very first time that Wiley Cameron leaned in and told me the name of his cologne.
Well, to catch a prick or something?
I'm serious. To catch my prick.
Yeah, to catch my prick. Yes.
To catch my prick. And
wow.
I'm telling you right now, that was a long time ago, but I have Googled it, and there is no such cologne.
Well, that's probably what he called it. So.
Yeah.
Were any of the staff at the Rebekah home when you were there? There was men that were on the staff at the Rebekah homes, correct?
Yes, but you didn't see them hardly ever.
Okay.
When I got there, and I do not remember their real names, but when I got there, the couple that was we called them Granny and Papa.
Okay.
I can see their faces as plain as day, but I cannot remember the names. And I found them weird, and I will tell you why. Their little apartment in the dormitory, that 2-story dormitory, the Rebekah home, shortly after you come in the front door on the left-hand side is this apartment, and that's where they live. That's where, the dorm parents or the dorm family, whatever you want to call it, would live.
Right. Okay.
On-site housing there in the dorm. And I am telling you, they probably remained the dorm parents for like the first 9 months that I was there. And I probably saw them 10 times. I found it weird. I never really got to know them, and I just found it weird. But and it was usually like at a choir practice. And then, of course, you always saw it. I mean, you saw everybody at church. Everybody went to church.
Right.
But you didn't interact with them. They just sat with us. You didn't know them. They didn't know you. You just followed the rules. And yeah, they handed out whoopings with big old boards.
Oh yeah.
I didn't ever get any.
I did.
I was a good girl.
I got my share of whoopings.
Oh, did you?
Oh yeah.
Oh, did you?
Oh yes.
No, I didn't get any. I was too afraid, so I minded the rules.
They went on the demerit system. So.
Yep.
Yep. If you got 6 demerits, they'd have a little yellow slip that your parents had to sign, and in big red letters sideways it said licks. And we knew the next day we'd go up to the principal's office and he'd make us bend over and he would just hit us with the board 4 or 5 times. There was a guy there, his name was Patrick, I believe. Are you familiar with Corpus?
Not really.
Okay. Well, there was a pharmacy. It was
Not
called.
really.
There was a pharmacy there. It used to be called Nichols Pharmacy. And I believe his dad was the owner of that. And he went in. We were all in line, waiting to get our licks. And he was a little chubby, redheaded kid with freckles all over his face. And he walked in there, and you could hear him get licks. He came out, and he started laughing. And the principal grabbed him by his collar, pulled him back in, shut the door, and gave him about 8 or 9 more, as hard as he could. And that boy came out crying.
Yeah. Well, that was the point. That's how they broke you.
Right.
Yeah. They made you cry.
All it did for me is it made me hate religion even more. It didn't make me comply. I just wanted to get out of there. So.
And it is. I am comfortable saying I hate religion. That doesn't bother me. And it's not synonymous with God or my higher power at all. My spirituality.
Right.
I do hate religion. In fact, when my husband and I talk about it now, and I did remarry. Mm-hmm. I met a man 35 years ago. Great guy. He is the opposite of everything there. If you think of Rolloff, he's the opposite. But I just hate religion, and when we talk about this, he knows my story, and I have always said I believe that organized religion is the great whore of Babylon, talked about in the book of Revelations. I absolutely believe that, because they have messed up everything. Yep. The devil didn't need to do anything.
No, he didn't. They did it all on their own.
He didn't. We did it. We did it.
What's funny, Donna, is the guy, your first husband, your ex-husband, the one that they gave your hand to, basically, was somebody, I guess, that they thought was the perfect man for you. And the man that you're married to right now, who Lester Roloff or Wiley Cameron would consider sinful and of the devil, is the right man for you. It's sort of ironic when you think about it. But
it is.
Yes.
It is. There's a lot about this that's ironic.
I had heard some stories about some of the Lighthouse and Anchor Home. I know there is, well, not for certain, but I heard rumors that there was some homosexuality going on over there too. Something that Rolloff always preached about as well. Some of those kids were getting violated terribly.
Yes. It was always the rumors.
Yes.
And specifics I'll never know. And nobody ever liked to know. Everything got handled through the next church sermon. That's how they did it.
Right.
And that was it. And nobody ever really wanted to know. There today it blows my mind when I think about how could you have so many troubled people, especially adolescents, frontal lobe still growing.
Yep.
And not ever, there was not ever a doctor, a therapist, a counselor, a psychologist, no one. We didn't have group therapy sessions. We didn't get to talk about any kind of traumas, what happened to us, what brought us here. It was, how did they miss that?
Well, I've always heard that they always told the girls, don't talk about your past. You plead that under the blood of Jesus and you forget about it. And of course, you have scripture and prayer. That's your psychologist right there. Scripture and prayer, and of course, Lester Roloff playing all the time,
24/7.
That's your therapy right there. It's enough to make someone go insane.
I know, and you know what? I will stick with. I believe there was a time that the vision was righteous.
Right.
But I also, in the later years, found myself sitting at Lester Roloff's table on a couple of different occasions, and he was wrong. And it was hopeless for me because I was the female.
Right.
And my husband, before he started getting his feelings hurt a little bit because he didn't like the way some things were going around there on the farm and decided, you know what, fine, screw it, I'm just going to go start using drugs again. Before that happened, and he was still preaching, the first service on Sunday evenings and sometimes Saturday night. I mean, he was still being a hot shot, but he was a awful human being in our home. Horrid, awful human being. Wretched, mean, cruel, vile, awful human being. And I had to keep my mouth shut about it because I was there to support this man.
And submit to him.
And make Rolloff look good.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I tried. But I was very young, and nobody could do that. Things reveal themselves. No matter how hard you try, it seeps out.
Right.
And there was two different occasions where things appeared to be one way, and they were not. And I was brought into Lester Roloff's kitchen there in his big old house with the pillars, with my husband sitting next to me, being scolded because I'm not being the right kind of virtuous wife.
So it was your fault.
And Lester Roloff was just wrong. It was my fault.
Yeah.
It was my fault. And it was very inappropriate behavior that was taking place with a bunch of the girls. What had happened was there was supposed to be a car wash that we had put together for what was the youth department to earn money for activities and stuff like that.
Okay.
And it ended up being nothing but a great big giant, and all the workers there, my husband included, were involved in it, and I ended up leaving. I was disgusted. It was nothing. It ended up being nothing more than a great big giant wet T-shirt contest. I am not lying.
Where was I?
And you know where it happened? It happened on that blacktop in between the dorm and the
really?
school. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And I was running a little bit late because I had to tend to our daughter. And by the time I got there, it was on full blast, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and I was so embarrassed. I was so hurt. And my husband was, these girls were lined up, and I am not lying. And it was the workers doing it with the buckets of water and the hose, and nobody was washing cars anymore.
So the girls weren't wearing bras? The girls weren't wearing bras?
No, they had on bras.
Oh, okay.
They had on bras.
Okay.
Yeah, they had on bras. But this is Lester Roloff's place, remember, here.
Yes.
I mean, this was Lester Roloff's place. I was, and you couldn't even wear tank tops there if you were a chick. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and I griped at my husband and left. I went back to my trailer. And the very next day was Sunday. And Sunday evening sermon, Lester Roloff, before he got into his sermon, he said, I heard about this car wash that happened out here yesterday, and I don't know how he heard about it. I do not know how he heard about it. So there must have been a lot of other people offended besides me, because I didn't go to him. I never went to Lester Roloff with anything ever.
Right.
Twice I got called into his house, but I didn't trust him. I didn't trust him.
How could you tell him anything? You were going to be.
I did not trust him.
But you were going to be wrong anyway. So it didn't matter.
Yes. But I had an attitude for a little bit about that with some of the other workers there that were involved, and apparently I was holding a grudge too long. Oh. So I was told to let that go. That my problem was, and this is Lester Roloff's words, sitting there next to my husband, who was the bad guy who did this, who was acting inappropriate and not like a preacher. No lecture for him. But I was told, I am struggling with the green-eyed monster. Jealousy.
I got you.
This ain't got nothing to do with jealousy. That was totally inappropriate. Totally inappropriate.
They were all touching each other and everything.
That's why you mentioned it in your... Yes.
Yeah.
And I said, and that's why you brought it up in your sermon. It got back to you.
So basically...
And he tapped my hand. Well, I just think it's time for you to forgive. And I didn't ever say another word. I didn't say another word.
Rolloff was a teller of tall tales. I don't know why I did this, but I listened to some of his sermons. And there was one sermon, there were several sermons actually, where he was talking about how some of the judges would call him up and ask him if he would take these boys or these girls. And there was one where he said that this boy murdered somebody, okay? And of course, Lester Roloff says that the judge said, he doesn't need to go to prison. He just needs Jesus. Can you take him in? For murder? Are you serious? There's no way that the judge is going to say, yeah, we're just going to sentence you to a boys' home instead of putting you in jail for life. You know what I mean? For murder? It's ridiculous. And
well, yes. And listen, I'm all for faith. And I am all for, while you're taking care of your...
Oh, I think we lost her.
And ask him to help you to keep doing that. But there's more to it than that. Jesus don't fix it. He expects you to do stuff. He's done his job.
Right. And what's funny is...
and it's okay if sometimes, you feel like doing those things that maybe you're told not to do. You're not going straight to hell. It's not all over for you.
No.
But that's how they made you feel.
Right. And I remember there was one sermon that he said that he was... Before he took off on his plane, everybody would get together and they would pray for traveling mercies. That was their thing, the traveling mercies. And, of course, he died in a plane crash. So... Yeah. I guess Jesus was asleep that day. And
you know what?
Yeah.
He was reckless. He was reckless when he flew.
Oh, was he?
He was reckless when he flew. Yes, he was absolutely reckless when he flew. And I was just so young and naive, I didn't know to be scared. I trusted. You know what I would tell myself when I would feel scared when I was in his little airplane with him? I would think, no, okay, God might kill me, but he won't kill Lester Roloff. I mean, look at that. Look, I'm serious. I know that's a neurotic thought.
Right.
But he did silly things. I remember one time when we were flying, and I just remember waking up. And he started laughing. He said, yeah, all of you fell asleep. I was wondering if that would happen. He said, we're running late, so I had to fly extra high. So the oxygen was different.
Oh, okay.
So I guess he was managed. What if he'd have fallen asleep?
Right. Oh.
And then we're flying over this field one time, and he looks at some. He looks down. We're low enough where he can see some deer. He starts just, just kind of like chasing them a little bit. Not meaning any harm, but he was careless.
Just to fly over.
And it got him one day.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it got him one day.
And I know that you heard how Wiley Cameron died.
I read it last night. I had no idea until I read it last night.
The ironic thing about that, and I told it to somebody else, is I have some of his sermons on MP3 because you can't find them anywhere, any of Wiley Cameron's sermons. But the name of the sermon was "A Man on Fire," ironically enough, and it was about basically the rich man and Lazarus. You remember that story? And how the rich man looked up from hell and saw Lazarus in Abraham's bosom. And, of course, he ends up dying in a fire. The welder arcs his wedding ring and catches him. I always knew Faye would be the death of him. So, but, yeah, so it's ironic. He would talk about somebody on fire, and then he ends up dying by being on fire.
That really is ironic, and I don't like to get all cryptic and stuff, but it's and shit happens.
Yes.
Hey, there's a logical reason why his wedding ring arced, but I wonder if there's ever a time that there's a little more to it too.
Well, I think
and is it wrong to think that way?
He wanted he didn't want any morphine. I guess you read that part. He asked for no morphine.
No.
But they forgot one part, though. I think he said he didn't want morphine, but he wanted his cologne to catch my prick.
When he needed his cologne. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that Donna, that's going to stick with me now. That's going to stick with me, to catch my prick.
It stuck with me my whole life. And I've told this story. I never told my mom.
Right.
And there was homosexuality going on in the girls' home, in the Rebekah home. I mean, there was.
Right.
But I don't think there's anything wrong with it. If you want to know, I don't judge people for that. I have a grandson who's gay. But we are talking about the Lester Roloff homes here.
Right. Abomination.
And that is another thing that happened to me as I got away from there and my mother's church stuff. I did go seek real therapy. I did do that. And I spent probably 25 years in therapy and tending to the chaos that all of this created. I really did. And I have had, up until 8 years ago, reoccurring nightmares. And the nightmare is the same. I'm back there, but I'm a grown-up now. And I am screaming at everyone that I can see that this is wrong now. I don't have to be here. You can't keep me. I'm not that. I'm married to this guy named Mike Prescott. I'm a grown-up. And everybody's looking at me like they don't know what I'm talking about. And I can't get out the doors. And then, of course, I wake up. But it has been reoccurring my whole entire life up until 8 years ago.
Well, funny you were talking about the lesbian stuff going on in the Rebekah home. I know a girl named Cindy who was with the Bethesda home, who was also affiliated with Rolloff. She said that these teen girls, before they went to bed, a staff member would come in and make them raise their two fingers up in the air so they could smell them to see if they've been playing with themselves. I mean, that is just perverted. Perverted. Yes, it's Cindy from the Bethesda home. It's on my channel.
I believe that.
Yeah, It's on my channel. It's Cindy from the Bethesda home. But that's just
And
disgusting.
the Bethesda home especially, you know what? It was kind of known that for as strict as Rebekah was, Bethesda was even worse. And from time to time, a girl from Bethesda would come to Rebekah, and she loved it because she could wear her regular clothes. She could pluck her eyebrows.
Oh.
It was just much more stricter at Bethesda.
I mean, there's
And I don't know why, because I was never there. But that was that was word on the not straight. That was word on the farm.
right. There was stories of girls eating their own vomit and stuff like that. It's really bad.
Yes. Yeah.
Now
And that's
did
where the babies. That's where
right.
the unwed mothers went.
Right. Now, the question is, did Lester Roloff know about this and didn't do anything? That's the mystery. You know what I mean?
I think that there is a good chance to say that there was much that was kept from him.
I believe that.
Because there was a lot of people getting by because they made themselves a part of the Rolloff evangelistic enterprises. And had not it been for that, they would have had a different kind of life, like they'd have to go out and take care of themselves.
Yeah.
And by the time that I exited the Rolloff Enterprises for good, I had been to almost all the different homes for one reason or another, even out there on the Intercoastal Canal. And every one of them. One time I went to the unwed home, the Bethesda, Maryland home, and I spent one night there, and it was when my husband and I were traveling. Didn't really interact with anybody there. We just, instead of a hotel, we slept there and got up the next morning. But all the other ones, I had spent a significant amount of time, and every place, every home, had people that you didn't really know why they were there. You didn't, weird people, and creepy people. Like the one out in Cologne, Georgia, there were older folks there, and there was nothing there. I mean, the buildings were there, but they were all vacant. There was nothing there to do.
Huh.
But there was the trailer with this old couple there that worked it.
Right.
And then there was a couple of older guys who were going into town and huffing gasoline, and they'd wander around. It was the out in Cologne, Georgia, where they owned that land, and they had that old antebellum home on it. And he used to hold like revival meetings out there once in a while.
Okay.
And he just had a lot of hangers-on that I don't think that he knew about.
Right.
Even Wiley Cameron's son was out there.
Wiley-
He came out there shortly before I left.
Wiley Jr.
Wiley Cameron's son.
Isn't it
Wiley
Wiley
Jr.?
Yes, Wiley Jr.
And, yeah. And the whole time he was there, he was doing nothing but drinking and smoking. Going out and partying and all. I know for a fact.
Doesn't surprise me at all. Doesn't surprise me.
It was a family thing. It was nepotism.
Yeah. And I'm sure Wiley Cameron...
Lester Roloff's own daughters...
Their own... Yeah, go ahead.
Lester Roloff's own daughters weren't all that, big-time church girls themselves. And I'll give you another little bit of news. Lester Roloff hadn't actually been, from the time he said I do until the time he met his maker, been exactly a faithful husband. And I will tell you how I know.
How do you know?
When I got married out there, when I was in the girls' home, during probably the last 6 months, a girl came to the girls' home. And it turns out when she came to the girls' home, she came with her mother. When she came to Rebekah, she came with her mother, but her mother moved into a trailer on the farm to work, and her mother played the piano. So her job was going to be playing piano for the church services.
Okay.
But she didn't live with her mother in this trailer. She came into the girls' home. Wonderful girl. And I thought that was weird, but I didn't say anything, and we became very, very good friends. Such good friends that she was one of my bridesmaids in my wedding.
Okay.
About 2 weeks after I got married, I'm staying in what we called back then the guest house, which was the building between the dorm, Rebekah dorm, and the older girls' dorm.
Jubilee. Okay.
And she's in there, and we're talking. And I don't know why, but she's my good friend, and I just say to her, I think I might have made a mistake. I don't know what I've got myself into. I'm 17. All I know is I couldn't go back to my mother's house. I think I made a mistake. And she's like, oh, Donna, I'm sorry. And she said, listen, I have to tell you. She goes, well, and for me, this was like a big bombshell secret. I'm confiding in her. So she says back to me, well, I need to tell you something. And she takes her hand and she puts it over half her face where all you can see is like her nose, her eyes, and her forehead. And she says, who do I look like?
Oh.
I don't know. I'm thinking, I don't know. I have no idea where she's going with this. She goes, just think. Who do I look like from here up? Who do I look like? Just keep thinking. And I can't get it. And then she says, Lester Roloff. And I went, what?
Oh.
I'm not lying. As God is my witness. May my soul burn in hell. And that's what I went, what? She said, yeah. He is my biological dad. That's why we're here.
Man.
My mom has some mental issues. That's why I don't want to live with her in the trailer. I prefer here with the girls. And that's the truth. But you can't ever tell anybody. And I said, you have my word, I won't. And I didn't until you.
Wow.
True story.
Wow. Well, I guess he wasn't the
True story.
clean-cut preacher we thought he was.
No, he was
And
not.
no telling how many other children he has out there out of wedlock. He could have more.
No telling.
Yes.
Yes, he could.
And maybe Wiley Cameron as well. Maybe he was.
Absolutely.
Maybe he was throwing his prick
Absolutely.
everywhere.
I have wondered over the years. Yes. You know, and when the first time that I told that story to my husband, he caught it. He caught on to it immediately. He's a man, and he said, "You know what he was doing? He probably did that. He had a line that he tried out on everybody, like the new girls to see, where they take the bait." I said, "Yes, that's exactly what he was doing." And it scared me, so I just did never say a word. I never brought it up, and I always acted from there on out. I acted normal, and and I compartmentalized and believed it so well that I even grew to care about him a little bit and kind of looked at him like a father figure. And that is why, when it came time for my wedding, I asked him to walk me down the aisle and give me away.
Right. Well. Oh.
Now, Faye and I, we were never fans of each other.
I don't think anybody was a fan of Faye. I didn't like her either. So she was she seemed like a cold-hearted bitch.
I don't know what her deal was. I'm going to be really honest with you. When I found that article about Cameron dying, I was shocked that she was still alive. I was shocked. She was always deathly sick and having to drink nothing but carrot juice, and then it was something else, and then it was something else. And then I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I hated her singing voice.
Oh!
Hated it.
And then they pierced him in his side, and his
I have.
I know everybody there loved it. At least that's what they said. And they just loved when Sister Faye sang. I hated it. I thought it was ridiculous. And every time I wanted to crack up laughing.
Her vibrato. She had really bad vibrato on her voice. I have a sermon with Wiley Cameron. It's got her singing. Oh, I've never. I'm gonna put it on this podcast. I'm gonna put it on this podcast. That way you can hear it. But it is just.
Okay.
It is just.
Okay.
Oh my goodness! Yes, Faye Cameron. Her singing was atrocious.
It was atrocious, but she thought she was little Lester Roloff's Barbra Streisand.
Oh man. Someone say, "Honey." I mean, oh my goodness! It's like, oh.
Why doesn't anybody tell her? No, we're not.
Oh, no. No.
This is the way we like it. Leave it.
But she
Just go along with it, okay?
She was truly, I believe, a really cold-hearted bitch, to tell you the truth. Mm-hmm. She was somebody...
And I think a lot of that had to do with her husband, because I think she knew what a shady, slimy pervert he was.
Yes. It could be it.
And I think that's why she hated those girls, and it's not a stretch at all for me to believe that she was going around slapping them and being really nasty.
You see, that makes sense now. That all comes to, the pieces are coming together.
Absolutely.
I would say, for people...
She didn't like me. She was really hateful to me.
Right.
She just really... Because there was a period of time that Brother Cameron and I were kind of close, but it was only like daughter-father stuff.
Right.
And she just... She let me know in a woman way, She didn't like me. And she didn't like any of those girls.
It was that green monster.
That green monster. That green monster. But it really isn't the green monster. It's the behavior of the man she's married to.
Right.
And then she had to sit there all those years and listen to him preach like, preach it, brother.
Kind of sounds like Clinton's.
I mean, how do you compartmentalize that?
Sounds like the Clintons, stand by your man.
Yes. Yes, I believe that's what it was. I absolutely believe that. And I absolutely believe with all my heart that Lester Roloff and Marie Brady Rolloff had at one time made an agreement. Because looking back, I couldn't see it at the time because I didn't really understand who all these people were. But, I mean, he was in cahoots with Jack Hiles, Jerry Falwell Sr.,
Bob Jones.
Bob Jones. I mean, he was what he would be considered now a big time preacher on TV. I mean, really, and I just think that happened. I think ego happened. I really do, and I think that his wife knew about his indiscretions. Because for as long as I was there, all those years I was there, his wife Marie probably was at 4 church services. You never saw her. And I spent time in his house.
Yes, you never saw her. She was always...
Never.
She was always...
And I believe that they made an agreement that she was just going to take one for the team and let me build you this big, beautiful house, and you can just do what you want. Just don't ruin it for me.
Right.
God forgives me. I'm sorry.
I guess as long as the money was coming in.
I believe that.
As long as the money was coming in.
And as long as the money.
Yeah.
And she could, she was always traveling. Always traveling. You always heard that. Always traveling. And she had no interest in his comfrey drinks and his bicycle riding and his health food eating. She had no interest in that. Did you ever see her?
Yes, I saw... what was it? It was on YouTube called Freedom's Last Call, and he's sitting down on the phone. Yeah. He's talking with his wife is there. She's a little chunky. She was chunky.
She was quite a large woman.
Yes.
She was quite a large woman.
She didn't get large by eating carrots and salads.
No, it was there was, and I always found that odd too. The dichotomy between them, and they're individual people, right?
Mm-hmm.
But. She was this ghost.
Yes.
She was like a ghost.
Yeah.
And I did notice that after his death, she did, I don't know that she wrote the book, but there's a book out there that is claimed to have been written by her,
Yes.
and it's his biography.
Living by Faith was what it was
Living
called.
by Faith, yeah.
And you know how much that thing costs? I went on Amazon, and the book cost $140 or $150, something like that. Just
Are you serious?
Yes, just a ridiculous amount of money for this book. Yes,
Wow.
yes. Well, see,
I wonder,
What?
have they had any buyers?
well, the People's Baptist Church is still running. They're kind of a shell of their former self. I don't think they have the big donors like they used to have. So whenever, like I said, whenever Rolloff would bring a teen into the homes, he didn't charge anything. No money. The taxpayers
No.
didn't pay a dime.
Yeah.
Now, and I have some videos on, I review the Rolloff Men's Home application to get in there. It's a $542 fee and $300 a month to stay there. You only get $50 in an account for hygiene items and stuff like
Okay.
that. And if you decide, it's a 9-month program, and if you decide to leave early, well, you're going to be leaving with no money because they're going to keep your money and consider it a gift.
Yeah.
So they're not bringing teens in, but they're robbing the adults blind, is what they're doing now. So,
Well, do you remember a guy named Bill Jeff?
the name sounds familiar.
When I was leaving, it was like right at the very end. He had come on board, and he had taken over like the radio stuff.
Okay.
And I remember it wasn't too long after he was there, and I was deciding I'm out of here. This is just not working. Yeah. And rumors began to surface around the farm because they were always flying. And people just couldn't wait to tell on each other to make themselves look good. But it was, the rumors were flying a little bit that he was not being really honest with some money that was, a lot of the donations that were coming in.
Right.
And some of the things that he had changed the format a little bit, and about donations and things like that. He got a little shady.
Not
And I don't
surprising.
know how long he was there after I left, but yeah, I did hear that.
It's not surprising that sooner or later somebody was going to steal some money. Not surprising.
Well, and he was also not really, and this kind of, and it made sense why things got so bad, but he was really not, it was the first time somebody had been brought in that wasn't like looking to come and work on the mission field for God. That he was hired to do this because his specialty was radio.
Okay.
And that was kind of, a lot of people had a problem with that, even though everybody was living in as much sin as they could get away with, still. We gotta look like we're Christians here.
Got to act the part.
Just a lot of weird stuff. A lot of weird stuff.
Yeah.
There was. Do you remember a guy named Joe Villar?
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, he was another family out there at that time, and it turns out he had been raping his daughter
Oh.
the whole time. She was, his wife came out, moved down the farm with him. They were a family going to work there, and he ended up being a really good friend of my husband's, but he was also shooting up with my husband. I was good friends with his wife, who was a really nice lady, and she did the same thing I did. She ended up taking her kids and leaving, but one of the reasons why she did is, as it turns out, the daughter finally couldn't take it anymore and said,
Right.
he is not only shooting up, but here's what else he's been doing.
Wow.
And I thought it was weird. There were things, you just see things and feel, I don't know. There just wasn't one person. It was a whole different world when I stepped out of the Rebekah home. and moved on to the farm.
Yeah.
From the very first second.
Wow.
It did not, it felt like a wasteland. People weren't warm.
They were horny.
They were horny and very distrusting of each other.
Very distrusting. Well, that
But
sounds...
you did make brownie points when you outed somebody, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
You did.
Well, Donna, this has been wild.
Yeah.
This has been great. I'm glad you came on.
And I'm glad to say that I have survived. I have survived. And I have a feeling somewhere in there something healed and got better, because like I said, I have not had this recurring nightmare for almost 8 years now, and that's wonderful.
Yes, it is. The therapy is working.
Yeah. A lot of therapy. I've had a lot of therapy. For not just that, for the stuff that happened before, and, you know, a lot of therapy. And, you know, a lot of the bad guys aren't here anymore.
That's true.
But I absolutely just cannot believe that they're even operating on any level. It just shocks me.
Well, they're basically below the
Maybe
radar.
They're still helping people.
They're below the radar now.
That's kind of how it looked. Even when you look up things, because that's why, are they operating now? It's very, very ambiguous. They just
right.
Don't let you know too much.
They're,
and then this big shade comes up where you can't even finish reading it.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's they're keeping themselves afloat, you know, keeping the enterprises going, but that's about it. They're not out preaching. They're not out evangelizing anymore. There's no more schools. It's all just the Rolloff men's home and the Jubilee home for ladies. That's all, and they're all adults. So, like I said,
the church is he just pastors it like a regular church.
Right. The pastor's name is E.H. Marshall. I've never heard of the guy. He must have just recently acquired being a pastor there. So, I don't know. Like I said, I haven't seen anything in the news about him. So, like I said, they're just keep them below the radar and just trying to get as much money as they can. That's about it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
All right. Donna, thank you for coming on. This is, like I said, this has been wild and enlightening.
You're welcome.
Yes, I hope we could talk again.
It really has. Exactly. I hope so too.
Yes, because I'm sure there's probably more, but we're getting close to.
There is. Oh my gosh, it's just been flooding. It just really is.
Right.
It is the last. And I'm going to tell you something. Ironically, we were talking about my grief.
Mm-hmm.
I actually got a message from him today, and he said, "Send me." He wants me to send him, contact him on Facebook, private message, so he can update me on what's going on in his life.
Okay.
I'll think about it.
Sounds a little weird, but okay.
Sounds a little weird.
Yes.
Sounds a little weird.
All right. Donna, stay on the line one quick second, and I'm going to end the podcast, and
okay.
I'll chit-chat with you. All right. So for everybody who's watching, please subscribe to the channel, like the page, share it with your friends, and we will see you next time on the podcast. You take care of yourself. You take care of each other. Have a great day.